Here's a look at the updated Big Ten conference standings, and only 4 teams have played a conference game thus far, and not everybody has played 3 games thus far. But with that in mind, those teams that have played 3 games have now played a fourth of their schedule overall on the year. So I want you guys to each pick a handful of teams and tell me the grade that you have for them at this point in the season. Russ, we're going to start with you, and we're going to start with Nebraska.
Yeah, the Huskers A+. This was my sleeper to contend for the Big Ten title this year. Matt Rule has been good in his second year. If you look back at the history of where he's been, and the Huskers are well on the way, right? 3-0 into the top 25. They've had stellar quarterback play from a true freshman, but really one of the more overshadowed things has been the defense. Matt Rule made maybe one of the best hires a couple of years ago with Tony White from Syracuse coming over, defensive coordinator. His defense has allowed 2 touchdowns in 3 games. They've been, but they rarely have broken. And that includes a game, of course, against Colorado, who we all know has incredible explosive guys like Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. So they have been good for an A+ in my book.
So as an unbiased, highly respected member of the media, you go with the team that you chose big things for in the preseason as your A+, Ross. I respect that.
That's right.
I'm going with the
pat on
team.
the back.
I had very limited expectations for the Indiana Hoosiers. That's despite all of the bravado, all the swag, all the very sort of Coach Prime mantra, essentially, that Curt Cignetti brought into Bloomington with him. I still didn't expect this, man, from Indiana. So I got an A+ as well. It goes to the guys in Bloomington. The Hoosiers have been beyond anything I could have expected, anything that most folks expected through 3 games this year. Yes, the competition will continue to ramp up for Indiana, but it has ramped up every week essentially so far this season. They're 1-0 in the Big Ten. They did so on the road. Were able to control the majority of the action at the Rose Bowl. It's been the passing attack. It's been the spread look. They've been able to run the game, run the ball effectively as well. And their defense has been playmaking also. So everything that you could hope for from Indiana, they've been able to accomplish at a high level. And everything that Curt Cignetti said he was going to do, so far he's been getting it done.
I think those are almost universally agreed upon A+. What those 2 programs have done in the first 3 games, that makes a ton of sense. However, you can have a great start to the year without getting an A+.
True.
With that in mind, Ross, what grade do you give to the Fighting Illini at this point?
Yeah, A- for the Fighting Illini. We saw the game against Kansas. Big win. Last year they went to Kansas. We remember got blown out and had kind of a disappointing year there with five wins. And this weekend, I think I'm more excited about any game this weekend than outside of Tennessee, Oklahoma on Saturday, maybe this one. Illinois at Nebraska, number 22 against number 24, and we'll be able to see a little more from the Illini, two of the best teams we've seen so far. Can they take it on the road and do it? Luke Altmaier, quarterback's been playing really well. Illinois is I think in the top 25 offensively in like the main stat categories: passing, rushing, 17th nationally in total yards. But hey, as I mentioned earlier, they'll meet a Nebraska team that's playing just about as good defense as anybody. So the test, that A-, we'll see if it can hold up on Friday night in Lincoln.
Yeah, they're going to have a tough task. There's no doubt about that, man. And that game, both teams play at Memorial Stadium. It's going to be at the one in Lincoln, but they've both been exceptional stories for the season so far. And I really think that the guys in East Lansing have been a great story as well. So for me, Michigan State, I see them so far this season as a B+. I'm grading them on a little bit of a curve because it's the first season for Jonathan Smith. And so for what he's begun to nourish, to nurture with the Spartans, this combination of youth and experience, some of it pre-existing before he got there, some of it that he's brought in via the transfer portal. There's a really intriguing combination of talent, and he's been able to get it to coalesce pretty quickly here with this 3-0 start, but there's still, no doubt, a lot of meat on the bone for Sparty to kind of figure out how can they continue to enhance what we've seen from them so far. You would imagine that young talent will continue to ascend throughout the season with that development arc that everyone sort of assumes, but it does strike me as a coaching staff that knows how to continue to get the best from those guys, will put that work in. continue to be a better team later in the season than what we've seen right now. And when you can throw the football with talent at quarterback and receiver that Michigan State has been able to provide so far, and the defense is taking the football away, Michigan State's going to be a really dangerous team. So that's a part of what really makes this start so impressive, because they're starting to feel it.
Hasn't been 12 consistent quarters of pretty football,
right,
but wins are wins, and they're 3-0 at this point, which cannot be said to the other team in that state. Ross, what's your grade for the defending national champions?
Yeah, Michigan, I got it a C plus. Anthony, hey, this is a team that I before the season, this is my prediction, is the most disappointing team in the Big Ten.
Okay.
We're starting to get a trend here, aren't we? We're starting to see a trend. C plus for the Michigan Wolverines. Quarterback situation completely unstable right now. Obviously, making the switch, as we talked about earlier, to Alex Orji. Maybe that can light a spark there, but the situation certainly not great. Defense got exposed a little bit too against Texas. I mean, this is a front with a couple of NFL players on it, maybe more, and we saw the Longhorns run the ball consistently, block well. Thought Michigan would put up a little better job defensively, causing more pressure. We just didn't see that. And then, we saw against Arkansas State a 10-point win, some struggles at time. Obviously, had to make the quarterback change. It's just been a really hard time offensively for Michigan. And when you see, USC coming in with D'Anton Lynn, a defensive coordinator, this remade type of defense, it's going to be tough to move the ball again.
I agree. Michigan is one of those squads this season, Ross, that a lot of us were kind of thinking maybe because of the pedigree that had been there for a few seasons that you'd continue to see that. It's still certainly a college football playoff possibility, but there's a lot of growth that's going to have to happen if Michigan's going to be one of those squads. Maryland is a team that I'm not sure I would necessarily call them a sleeper, but I've definitely been impressed with the Terps so far this year. They're a team that could be, you could even make the case, should be 3-0 right now. Some key penalties and some critical moments ended up being a part of what stopped them from winning that game against Michigan State. And so the Spartans were able to seize that opportunity, but then they respond by going on the road against an old ACC foe and being able to take down Virginia. So that was a really impressive performance, especially for the way they emerged in the second half on each side of the ball in that game. A big question was, where Talia Tagovailoa was the quarterback who'd led them to the last 3 bowl appearances, 3 bowl victories. He didn't play in the third one, but being that guy, sort of that fulcrum that everything's centered around with Maryland football since Michael Locksley's been there. And now Talia's gone, and Billy Edwards steps into that fold and continues to play at a really high level as a signal caller. They've still got an exceptional defense as well. So this is a Maryland team that, if they would have been able to pull out that Michigan game, the grade would even be much higher, but they didn't. So B-, it feels like this is a team to me that could end up with a much better grade by the end of the year.
To replace a man who, by most metrics, was the greatest quarterback in the history of that program, with Billy Edwards Jr., who's doing a really nice job. And you brought up their defense, 10 forced turnovers for the Terps. You know how many teams in the country have more?
I do not.
0. They're number 1 in the land right now in forcing turnovers. We're not